Hello there.
Hello, I'm just pasting in something Fabian sent.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. I just spent since I spoke to you, so I picked up the Oculus, which then decided it wanted to do a reboot. And then one of the onboarding things I find absolutely ridiculous is that they haven't worked out a way to basically just move information from, be it your phone or your desktop, to things. So it wanted me to sign in, of course, into Facebook. So I then had to get that out. I then had to write it in very big letters so I could see it with pass-through. I mean, I don't know how you're supposed to do this in Oculus. We all use, if you're going to use a sort of 20-digit password or something. Luckily, mine wasn't that long.
The
how do you
password is
get that
just a
into
few
Oculus?
digits.
Sorry?
The password, my Oculus digit is only 4 digits.
No, that's not the Oculus account. They wanted me to sign in with Facebook or an Oculus account.
Okay, yeah, no, that's dreary.
So the problem is that there isn't, I use one password very successfully on everything else, but until something like that, or pick your flavor of that, is integrated into it, because so I got there and I got it. I've just been in the library room. It looks very nice. I quite like the hand overlays. That's quite fun. The limit is that the space I've currently got defined is very small, so I couldn't do much walking about because I tripped over a chair when I tried to get closer. But it looks very nice, and I like it. So I haven't addressed the thing I said I do when we're speaking on the phone, because I'll need to type and not talk when I do it. But I'll send some stuff after the call.
Good. I'm just adding a thing here.
It's even better, actually. I put the headset on and I had about 6 different things all saying your handset is updating, but they all said a different thing on them. So clearly, obviously, something had glitched slightly. It was somewhat surreal.
Yeah, it's amazing. Some of the tech is so incredibly advanced, like how you do the how you set the Guardian, but then it's so low tech, including for me now. The Guardian is lost every time I put it on, even if I'm in the same spots.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I have gone through things like cache removal and all of that stuff. But
the thing is, but I mean, I know, having used other new tech in the past, the difficult parts to keep in separate parts of your head, the annoyances of the moment, with the fact that these are all fixable problems, but they're not going to get fixed today. You just have to push through the noise.
Absolutely. Right, so I just added that there. Yeah, now the reason I want to rush with this, Vince, I got a tracking thing that the Oculus Quest thing has been received by Vince's office yesterday.
Good. Yep.
And I don't want him to start asking questions without having something to show.
Yep. I'll try and find it. I found one small tiny typo, not that it matters. It was only a letter at the end of something. I'm trying to remember, because I just put a whole lot of highlightings in this PDF, and then I obviously fat figured something which decided to remove them all unhelpfully. So back to square one. I think in your thing about talking about displays in VR, perhaps with your list of bullet points, one of the things you might be able to add a bullet there. It's difficult to know how to word it, but to make the point that even if you can't do it today, we know that you can effectively step into the data of a display. So in other words,
I will. look at that. Hang on, one second, actually.
Sorry, you're doing something.
No. I think that's it. Yeah.
Because I think that might be an easier place to put it than put it into the next bit where you talk about the scale of VR, simply because I think it's though it's perhaps the most interesting, exciting part of it from a work perspective, we're some ways off, and one doesn't want to oversell it. But I also think that perhaps it's something he might actually, if he gets the idea, might latch on to the most, in terms of thinking, okay, well, yeah, there's something here. Excuse me, there's something here that actually is new and is tractable and can be used for something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've added a sentence after the experimentals section in Scale of VR that says this is where we literally step into the data. But the reason I have displays in VR so well presented is partly because Bente said, oh, VR is just like screens. So I'll say, well, it is screens, but they're magical screens. Let me list it. And
yeah,
on the end of that scale, we have experimental, and that's where we're going to talk more about what you said.
Yeah, and that I think will help me, because one of the things that I can see might get misunderstood is probably the best way of putting it, and it rather alludes to something that Adam said in the comment. It's this thing about hello Peter, connecting the it's a nuance type thing. It's a difference between the experience being all and what you're doing when you have that experience.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, Mark was talking about the document, the Scale of VR under experimental, talking about where you're kind of more stepping into the data. But let's not forget what this document is. It is simply someone putting on a headset saying, oh, okay, I get it. Work can happen here. That's it. You know, to go into deeper dimensions would make it really massive. But we need to allude to it. And Fabienne, I've added your brilliant demo to the website, and I've added your in your opinion bit to the end of the emailed PDF. And of course, I invite everyone to do that. Mark and Fabienne I've communicated with. So Peter, just to fill you in, I got some very bad news about my friend who is having late stage cancer, and that's why I thought I might be late. But one of the things, I've known him since I was 15, you know, really close friends. He also has a child, young child, younger than Edgar. And that is this whole thing of not getting things done. You know, I'm sure we all have that discussion with friends to different degrees. And, you know, I will be there for him as I can, and I will deal with it as I can. But I honestly, truly think that, you know, I'm not a special person, except for I have a special community, which is you guys. And I think that our mission now to just do some demonstrations and show the world that work, not just sociality, where gaming can be in VR. Just that thing. I think it's so important. I know I talk about it often, but I think it would be hugely disrespectful to my friend if I now went all, I have to go sit in the forest for a few hours. I can do that on my own time. So that situation is just reminding me to get shit done. Anyway, I've updated the /VR page.
Oh, I have one other thought which related to the earlier thing we were talking about in terms of you scrolling back to your things about, you know, the scale of VR. One of the things you can sort of draw a link to, or, you know, not necessarily directly, but should the need arise in Talking Event, is that of the list I was looking, I to also look at the list of the things you put in the implementation there, some of Brandal's videos, and of those, probably the first one about showing the record of a dialogue deconstructed into a set of frequency patterns. It sort of hints at that. It's not so much that you're necessarily stepping into it, but what you're actually looking at is, instead of a display that you're used to, which is in a sense a 2D thing rendered in a sort of in a rectangular space normally. Well, it doesn't really matter what shape it is, but you know, it's a box and you see stuff in it that may or may not be moving. But just the fact that in there, although in that demo he's not necessarily changing the data, but he is able to manipulate in a way that you can see the data from slightly different angles, which hints at the notion that yes, you might be able to begin to look for instance, patterns that you might not see if that same data was presented another way.
Yeah, but the thing is, you know, what we show as a link to a video is very different from experiencing it. You know, I'm
Indeed.
doing it a little bit as in, oh, we're doing other stuff, you know, showing, you know, some of Brandl's back catalog, but the point now is selling VR, and VR cannot be sold in 2D. I am convinced of that.
Oh, no, indeed.
So, and also here's the one, when I say here, I said, you know, under displays, what would I say? It's sometimes said that VR is not much different from using several large displays. He is the one who said that, okay? So that's why that's
sure.
right up front. And I'm just starting by saying, yeah, and you know, that's good. You know, we don't have to go all Jaron linear metaphysical immediately, but we have to point to that future.
But I suppose the picture out of my mind is the fact that it's almost as if you might have a display that's showing sort of something sort of graph-like or whatever. It's the fact that you can reach in, you know, and change the graph and step back out, which is something you know, you can alter it in a 2D space and then press a button to make it render again. But there's more immediacy, plus the fact that you've got the extra degrees of freedom. So when we figured out the tools to allow us to sort of play with the data more and worked out how that's useful to do, I actually find that really quite interesting. But that experience getting good sits atop a sort of tranche of tools I don't think we yet have. We have a hint of what may come.
Yeah, I'm not really at that level of, yeah, Fabian.
Hi everyone. A quick note, by the way, on the more personal matters. Let's say, I don't think any of us is special, and I do think we focus on the interesting part right now. But I also think personally, sometimes it's really tiring to work on the most important stuff all the time. And at some point, even though I believe I'm working on like the core stuff, I just start to dislike it, just because I don't have the energy for it, for whatever reason. It can be because I'm just physically sick or ill, I mean, or something else happened in my life. And then at some point I need to just take a break, because otherwise, yeah, it's just not fun anymore. And if it's not fun, yeah, I don't know, maybe there is no point. So yeah, just a little parenthesis. The more technical aspect is, I mentioned it briefly on Twitter.
Hang on, Fabian, before you go into that aspect, can I just reflect on what you just said, please?
Yeah, sure, sorry.
So, yeah, I completely agree with you. First of all, it has to be fun because we have to be creative to do this. And the only reason I'm trying to get some funds is for someone else to do the boring stuff. Because if it is a job and it's paid for, it's a different thing, but not for someone to have to do it full time. But, you know, this community here needs to be experimental. You know, half of what we should do and talk about should be complete rubbish. And then maybe there's some diamonds every once in a while. So I'm not at all saying let's, not that you and me are contradicting each other. I'm just think we're on the same wavelength that, yes, some of the whole work in VR and do this and great, but then, you know, what happens if we spin this thing around? You know, yeah, we have to have a balance. Sorry, I don't know why I needed to respond to that because I added nothing. I just agree with you.
No worries. The technical aspect was on GLTF. I mentioned it briefly a couple of days ago, and in relationship to visual meta. So GLTF is a file format. It might be the PDF of 3D and VR. I say this a little bit provocatively. It did not exist 4 or 5 years ago, or it was basically nobody cared about it. Like when WebVR started, there was there was no GLTF. And then it started to get a little bit of momentum because probably because NVIDIA started to back it. And once the biggest 3D graphic cards manufacturer backs it up, then it suddenly legitimates it. And Microsoft and I guess Samsung too. And so it started to have this. Anyway, it started to get a lot of momentum to the point that now it's the de facto standard for 3D objects on the web. And because the web is so big, it starts to be the de facto 3D standard for everything. So when you do 3D, you're going to now send, in most cases, GLTF files. So why do I mention all this? Is because if we think, or rather, as we believe VR can be conducive to knowledge work, it's a tool amongst many, let's say with the Remarkable, or with actual paper, or with video projector, or with just a desktop computer. But it means some way to interexchange data, to interexchange things. But the thing is, like now in VR, those things have a volume, they have a texture, they have a color, etc. But they might still have some metadata that make them more than just a 3D object. But right now, GLTF files tend to be a model, like a 3D model with a series of points linked one to another, and then a texture to wrap it, like basically a candy box or a present box. But then there is nothing in it, kind of it empty. But maybe some of the conclusions or some of the thoughts or ideas or core concept behind visual meta could be used there for GLTF to say, okay, that GLTF of a banana represents a banana, but a banana has in the real world, let's say some caloric value or whatever, or has a Wikipedia page. Can we extend then the GLTF format to add whatever could be useful when we put it in or out of VR, or where we manipulate it for something like this. So yeah, that was roughly the idea, to say that GLTF is a format, that format can be extended. It's possible to send like a request for extension of the format. It's also possible not to give a fuck about it and say, we make the software that is going to read. I think that's a bit what Liquid is doing. It's like there is reader and author. It doesn't have to be supported by other readers and authors of PDF documents, but if they do, they would be able to handle it. So it's possible to do the same thing for GLTF, to say, okay, we bring it in a custom version of hubs, or in the editor, or in author also, actually, maybe could be compatible. But we're basically tinkering on the extension for GLTF in order to make visual objects in VR have more. Could be an interesting path in terms of interoperability and passing from one place to another in and out of VR.
Yes. I think that's absolutely the way to go. As you said, the PDF of VR potentially, and that has many benefits and opportunities. By the way, in my frustration, I have decided that I'm going to try to, of course, we're trying for the Linnean, but I'm also going to try to do author for VR as a normal commercial project. Because I think, I mean, the chances of, it being something is whatever, and I still haven't made any money from the software. So it's basically free, but to do it in an open way and to do it as a really, really focused attempt at work in VR, because you should be able to use your laptop, do the things, put on your headset, do extended stuff, put it up. It would be a really basic, case study for that. And if we do it with open formats, including potentially this, that would be amazing. Because one thing I didn't really focus on in the email to Vint is the opposite of the amazing stuff. Sometimes what I need with VR is almost nothing. I just want a focused environment where I have no side distractions. So, to have the options to go in both directions are kind of amazing. Mark?
Yeah, I listening to, I was sort of, this speaks to back to what Fabian was just saying. I like an idea, and I sort of liked coming out of what he was saying, is that whether it's GLTF or another sort of similar thing, is that it's one way of packaging information for the 3D space. Your nice example is, yes, banana has nutritional value. So if I give that banana to a person object, it knows how many calories it's getting. In a more pedestrian way, it might be that, so in a sense, instead of taking a large table of data as a table, because that's how we do it in the literal world, is it might be that effectively you pass in a set of 3D objects that contain their record, and then you can. So in other words, the information is all there, but they are all native 3D objects that still has that thing. So then if you want to do something funky in a 3D space with the investigating that information, you're actually working with the objects rather than doing the calculation and then trying to work out where the object ought to be. I don't know, but that just sounds to me a sort of more sensible way to go. But because also the fact is the information that's contained within doesn't necessarily all have to be there. It could be at the end of a URL that you would dereference as and when you need it, because obviously you might not want to take in an object that actually attaches to half of the internet, because you don't need all that information. You don't need it until you need it. But the idea of having a wrapper that effectively is a native 3D object accessing everything, which seems to me to turn around some of the ways that I've been seeing things talked about so far, is actually quite interesting.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I know nothing about this file format, and I consider myself not technical enough that it's likely to know a lot of things, but every single revolution on the internet or the web or computers or whatever, 10 years later, you look at it, it's like, actually, it wasn't that complicated, right? So I think we're one of those stages now, so I think we should make an effort for that. Yeah, Fabian again.
Yeah, I'll actually show it very succinctly. It doesn't have to take long, but just to demystify a bit the aspect.
Please take the time you need. This is important, and we're in no rush.
So let me know when you can see my screen, please.
Yes.
So that's something I will show a bit more in another context, but it's a visualization of my wiki as a timeline and interactive, and I can take some slices and whatnot. So I think that also could be interesting to discuss. But the more interesting aspect for here today is the 3D aspect. So I can take any page. So I have 1,000 pages more or less, and let's search for the one with 3D in it. I just have 3 pages with 3D. I have a page with 3D visualization on my wiki. I can select it. Select another one. It's going to update that very small 3D world with it. And why do I show it? So this is all web-based. So it's also to show you that GLTF is web-friendly and you don't need to install anything. So that's my 3D scene that I could see it in VR, but I can also save to a GLB file. So GLTF is the file format. GLB is for binary, so that you can compress it and then you can send it faster over the wire, but it's the same thing basically. And then once I get the file, I can open it I can send it, open it somewhere else, and I can also open it in hubs, for example, future of text. And I can also directly, let's say, save it on the server or another server and load it in hubs without even drag and dropping. But otherwise, I can also drag and drop. So let me see, downloads. I can put it there. I guess I kind of was still loading. And voila. So here, it's that one. So you'll have to trust me. There is a sphere that envelopes the world, but somewhere in that sphere is that I think you can see it here, where it's very small, but you see a little. Yeah, I think there. So yeah, that's there was some adjustment needed, but anyway, I hope you get the idea. So you can have those files, and this also, like I said, this is editable. So if I change here, or I make 5 blocks, 10 blocks, etc. So my point is GLTF can be directly generated on the page, sent to another page, can include, like here it's an image that has text in it, can also have some animation, and the more interesting aspect for us here are extensions where we can go beyond. So instead of having just like an image of the text, it could have the actual text and the actual text with metadata if we need, and then we can unpack this, let's say, in VR or in a tool. So that's a bit what Mozilla Hubs is already doing. They extended the file format to do, I forgot, but a couple of things extra. But yeah, just to say, it's not like a complex format where you need to install something, some extensions. It's all there. Plus, I believe I think the GitHub link has a very nice visual. Yeah, this one explains. It's a big image, could be a mural too, actually. And visually, we have some colors, what it is, how you can do, yeah, even some animation with an avatar, all this, and how you can put things in it. So why do I mention it? Is because, again, we can imagine having as a web page a GLTF editor. That's basically what that is. It's a very simple one, but a 3D editor on the web can save to GLTF as a file, like here I downloaded, or even send it directly to the server or send it socially, so that if you're in Hubs, I wanted to do this, but I didn't have the time today. But you can imagine this, instead of saying save GLB, it's saved to the server, and then in Hubs, you're in the headset, and you can directly see it there. And if you have done the right customization in Hubs, again, unpacking the text or the text with highlights or whatever data you want to include. So yeah, just to demystify a bit the GLTF aspect. It's not like a complex file format. It's nothing opaque, and it's made to be extensible too.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Thank you. Before we talk about the positive, something negative comes to mind, and that is, in my experience, the first 3D software that I used in the 90s, like Infinity, like Peter also used, was really elegant and clear. You know, you could choose the different views, you move things around. Spoke is really awful in terms of movement. I mean, I have this now, and yes, it helps, but still, it is absolutely shit. It really, truly is. And of course, it's free and it's a great effort, but I'm talking, you know, in the bigger scheme of things. It's not meant to criticize Mozilla. But the thing that is a problem is the 3D that came after that and kind of won out. A lot of, you know, Strata 3D was one of them, just clunkier and clunkier and more specialist. It seems that with every technology, there is an early hobbyist level that is not too technical, but it's really, really good. Do you remember Go Live before Adobe bought it and turned, you know, and basically killed it? It was insanely incredible. You could even do image maps and so much stuff for the web, super simple. And now, you know what we have, right? So when you show me something as powerful as that format and wrapper, if we really want to take the big view, we have to somehow, you know, do our main selling of VR knowledge work, but also really try to get these open source tools to a standard where they can fight off the competition that is more commercial. Yes, Fabian.
Well, it's you say all this because you didn't get yet Brendel's tutorial on Blender.
No, I look forward to Blender. You're absolutely right. I know that Blender is different, but the benefit of the thing that's annoying about Brendel, and I'm perfectly happy him hearing it, of course, is he will do many cool things, but a lot of it isn't VR ready. And in many ways, what's the point then in this community? You know, I need to stick my head in there to see what it's like. So with Spoke, what is brilliant, you know, me in one day from learning it, I made 2 different rooms. Okay, same room with different layouts for Vince to try. That's incredible. So that part of it is incredible. They just need to get their goddamn movement system fixed. Anyway, Blender does seem to be quite static as well. You know, just the fact that we had this discussion of what objects can be left in the room and that can then be moved, and none. That's absolutely crazy. These are some of the fundamentals we need to work on together.
I think also one of the my own experience with any tool, actually, not just Spoke or 3D or Blender and 3D or any medium, is that I look at it initially and I'm amazed by the results, like what people do with the tool. I'm like, wow, I want to do this. I don't start it because I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed, too many things, and okay, I just postpone it. I do start it and it's like, wow, it wasn't so hard actually. And then I can go from absolutely nothing to something horrible, but it's mine, so it's amazing. And then I think of the possibility and it's overwhelming. And then I reach a certain level that is much better than I was before, but it's still nothing compared to an expert. And I probably use the tool the wrong way, at least in the philosophy of people who designed the tool. And then I get super frustrated and like, okay, can't do anything. And then I move on to another tool, or I just give up, or this kind of things. But it's an emotional roller coaster of mastery until a point where the tool is just not enough. And then you need to make your own tool. Then you go back to the design principle, the philosophy of the people who made the tool. It's I'm just want to share that it's Spoke or Blender, but to me, any other tool, not even 3D, any tool of creativity, it's a love-hate relationship constantly. It always goes like this. But I can't help but do it again.
I do have one long-term lover, Adobe Photoshop. That has, for me, worked. But I agree with your points for every other piece of software, or that kind of those kinds of curves. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the stuff that Brandel has done with JavaScript, like the constellation and the mural, is absolutely fantastic. And that's where we have interactions. You know, we need more of that. But someone like me, I couldn't code even basic stuff to save my life. So that's, you know, why it's good to have a dialogue. And that's why the format you're talking about could be very helpful, because let's say I make a new room or something, and then right now it wouldn't be easy for Brandel to put one of those things into that room. But we need to figure out a way how.
Well, it does seem to me that the potential promise of the type of format that Fabian mentioned is that it gets you away from this thing where effectively you can do something fabulous at the moment if you code the whole thing almost from the ground up. But the number of people on the planet who are likely to be able to do that is remarkably small at any one time. But to be able to give things where people might be able to populate a sort of an object that works in this environment with information that they do understand, and that object have a reasonable chance of sort of basically being usable, seems to me a much more scalable approach in terms of general use. It might not seem the obvious way, and it might not be the most elegant coding way, but to get lots of people to actually engage with the thing, because as Fabian rightly says, you come to a new tool and it just seems like an impossible hurdle to start with, and there's this whole cycle of love and hate and in between you get some stuff done. But I one of the things I find myself constantly dwelling on when I look at some of these things is, right, well, how easily could I explain this to somebody else? And I don't mean, and not to somebody else who's determined not to like it, but somebody else says, no, okay, so what can I do with this? And then thinking, yes, right, okay. So the things they're going to need and the things that it's unreasonable to expect them to learn new just to do this is sort of an interesting constraint in the area.
I just wrote a sentence here based on that, and I just want to read it and see if you guys agree with it. This is under the section, what needs to be worked on. A way to put this in perspective. It's not that hard to make a virtual room. I made the library in less than a week's, sorry, I forgot to do quotes around that. The library in less than a week's learning. It is much harder to create interactions, brackets needs coding, And it's currently highly impractical to take an interactive system into a virtual room. Is there a better way to say that? Because that's one of the key things. I mean, that's ludicrous. It's almost like early days of Microsoft Word. Yes, you can change the color of the screen, but if you want to put an image in there, that just can't happen.
So it's yeah, I don't know how to put it more clearly, but it's interaction. Everybody designing software is scared of interaction because it's unbounded. If you do an animation, then it starts and it ends and that's it. So it's safe. But if you do any kind of interaction, you may wait for the user, you may have user input. User might send a string that is too long and crashes the software, or worse, make it execute code that is not his, or basically hack it. Like there is a whole security idea with like return value. I forgot the name, but so some way to hack. So I'm just saying that because I've been doing since I make prototype, so I've always been at that specific boundary actually of writing an extension for file format, adding interactivity. Even like I tinkered with Bitcoin 10 years ago. I don't know, like a long time ago. And the one thing I looked at is there is a specific field at the end of a Bitcoin transaction for scripts, but that was never enabled. And that's how now you have Ethereum, like the biggest competitor, quote unquote, to Bitcoin, is because then you can run some scripts. The biggest hurdle I have now with hubs and the team at Mozilla is because the one thing I write are extensions or ways to make hubs scriptable for interactions. But I'm just saying that over and over, years after years, project after project, in things completely unrelated, like hubs and Bitcoin, interaction has been the challenge because developers are afraid that they're going to lose control. And they're rightfully so afraid, like you truly lose control as soon as you write interaction or you let people give interaction, because they are in control of the stack, they're in control of the software. And then bad things can happen and do happen. I still always push for it because I think the way I learn and the way we do interesting things is through interaction, is through pushing stuff to the software and the software pushes back in a new way, not just looking at stuff. But that's also why you don't have, we had a brief discussion again on PDF and JavaScript and whatnot. That's why we don't have JavaScript in PDF, is because then stuff happens and stuff that goes beyond on what is expected. So interaction it annoys me, but it's not abnormal that it's always a challenge, because yeah, nobody in all the software projects I've encountered, interaction or the way to extend it is always a challenge.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be the interaction there. It can be, you know, the metadata can say this can allow this, 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 and this, and the different rooms can then take advantage of that, right?
Yes, but that's the possibility of writing an extension for file format. So it's different than writing making the host software extensible, let's say, or scripting capabilities. But yeah, if you, let's say, modify a known piece of software to interpret a file format to do more things, that's possible, but it's a bit different.
But it's funny you mention this sort of control thing. I mean, the thing is, people will always misuse it. And the analogy I think of is, you take a toy that to you clearly has a specific purpose, give it to a small child, and they'll have great fun using it for anything but the purpose for which the toy to you is obviously intended. And it still works, and it does do everything. So part of the issue here is just having a degree of, security is a genuine thing, but in terms of saying, well, look, this may not work for every interaction, and maybe that's the way you view it, that something, you know, it works or it doesn't, and one has to accept that some things will not work. But within that, then you can be reasonably free and not worry about saying, you know, that you can't stack a blue brick on top of a red brick. You know, well, why not? Because if we don't try, we'll never know if the world will end.
It might be a cultural challenge. I don't know if I really recommend The Chaos Communication Congress, it's a hacker conference in Germany every year. It's just a different culture. It's like the software does what it does.
Yep.
It's not necessarily what the designer or the writer of the software told it to do or was hoping to do. It does what it does, and it can do more. Can also usually does a lot less than the marketing for sure. But yeah, different culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of the presentation to Vint, any other comments?
No, I mean, I know I mentioned to you just before everyone came in, just about, I would give a little more of a leg up as to where to find the browser and things, because although it's a key thing, again, nothing is necessarily obvious before the fact. You need to be told once, but yes, you have a palette of things, and some people will stab all the buttons without being asked. Other people will ask, where's the manual?
Yeah, but that's yeah, okay, hang on a second, where to put that? So when you're well, I'm saying when you're set up, please open the browser in Quest.
I call it a web browser. I mean,
No, it's called a browser in Quest. That's the weird thing.
Well,
it's not called a web browser.
Web in brackets so that he understands what the browser does is acts as a web browser. When I read that, I was thinking, I was deliberately trying to read it fresh. It's called a browser. It could be browsing anything. It's likely to be a web browser. But what you want him to do is you want him to find the web browser, which happens to be an app called browser. But you don't know that till after the fact. So you're right, it's what it's called.
Okay. When you set up, please open the web browser, brackets, just called browser in Quest. And the Quest headset.
Yeah.
And head over to the website where a few experiences are listed and linked for you, including a basic library. Yeah.
Do you know when you put it on, you see that little palette? Unless you mouse over the things, you won't know where the apps are. There's nothing to tell you where the apps are.
That's in the setup guide. That's somewhere else.
Okay. Yep.
That's I mean, some of this is so stupid with the setup that someone, whether it's me or one of his assistants, will have to be there when he goes, huh?
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah, so.
Sorry, I write lots of documentation. So
I mean, I'm agreeing with you, but it's just, I don't, yeah, it shouldn't be
sure.
too darn long. So hang on, yeah, and then I'm going to write a few. Well, why don't we, Peter? Do you have any thoughts on this other than sending me your address, so we send you your request? And Mark, did you want to write down your little thoughts? I'm not saying small thought, but small in terms of length.
No, yeah, sure.
On the VR thing, because then I can paste that in now.
Okay. Let me. I'll do it as a comment in the chat for the easiest way. I'll give you the gist of it anyway.
Well, I should note that I'm basically roadblocked because I don't have a Facebook account. They're still requiring them, and I don't have a modern smartphone to be able to set up a headset. Plus, I'm still buried helping mom work through all the paperwork from dad's death. So it's going to be a while before I'll be able to think about getting into VR, but I can still be working again the software side purely from the 2D world for the time being.
But Peter, you don't need a smartphone for the headset.
Well, but you need for this, I've been looking online. They basically said that you need the smartphone in order to do the initial setup of the headset, and they're still requiring the accounts. That's all the latest that I've been seeing online. Again, anyhow, I'm just so buried helping mom work through the paperwork from dad's death.
No,
I think about the hardware now.
No, I understand, Peter, but for later, yes, you will need a Facebook account. So I guess, if you were okay, you would just make a basic one that has nothing in it. But in terms of the smartphone, Mark, am I wrong on that?
I think, well, I think you can have a metaverse account. I think the problem is that it's carefully constructed that if you in any time have ever had a Facebook account, it is quite determined to use that. If you don't have one, then you're in the happy sunny uplands, I think, where you can have a metaverse account. So that might, I mean, I know it's all still Facebook under the hood, but just to sort of go into that detail, and there is a native Mac OS app for Oculus. So I think when people say you'll need the phone app, what they're really saying is they assume that your only computer is a phone, which for lots of people is true. So it's people, you know, applying their norms unintentionally too tight when they're describing something. So I think that should it come to that, that if you have the, because that's how I did it. I mean, I did download the, you will need some sort of app, whether it's on the Mac or on a smartphone. But I think the two, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I've experienced, the two are interoperable. So for instance, I can use the Mac Oculus app to do things like get images off the headset screen grabs I've taken, and you can use it to set up screencasting and things like that, you know, as and if and when you come to that. But I think the assumption that you need a Facebook account is probably not true. You will need an account of sorts, but that I think can be a metaverse account. Though
just sorry, unfortunately, if you have an old one, the Oculus One, then you might, and if you already have an Oculus account, you're okay. Otherwise, if you get the new one, the Oculus 2, you need a Facebook account, and I'm pretty sure you need also a mobile phone for the first pairing, because it uses Bluetooth or scans over the Wi-Fi. It doesn't, you just need the first time for setup. You can even use someone else's phone, but I'm afraid you need both a phone, and now with the Oculus 2, you need also a Facebook account. And there is no way to hack it, unfortunately.
That is not what I remember, so thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I every 3 months I ask Oculus about it because they promised they would, but they don't.
So that's the secret why, yes, because I tried to set up an Oculus account and it keeps telling me, no, use your Facebook account. I'm saying, I don't want to use a Facebook account, but I guess.
A little thing also, I for the document right now, I will share my screen because I think you might be able then to do a couple of screenshots to add to the document. Like here, I'm pointing to the browser.
Okay, I don't want to do that for the
Okay.
document, but I may very well do that for the website where the link is. Oh, do it again, please. That was really nice. But it's just the document is so small now, it fits in an email. Once I put an image in, it just, you know, it like our journal was killed by that. But can you show it again? I would absolutely love to use the screenshot.
It even worked for me in 3D when I crossed my eyes over.
So there is a saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So maybe you can make the document shorter by using.
Can you point to it again, please?
Yeah.
No, I'll point under it actually, so it doesn't obscure it. But not the other one. Boom. Yeah, you got it. Okay, let me open that in Photoshop and straighten it out and move it about.
I can also select this one. You can do another photo of this one.
No, this is actually great.
Yeah.
You have it open in the background also, so they have a preview of what's coming, the hubs and whatnot.
And actually, it probably, it's definitely worthwhile having somebody with you if you have that opportunity, because they can read things like you'll get a two-factor authentication somewhere in the process that is not going to come to the Oculus. I was saying to Fred before you all came in, that's the one bit I find sort of, I'm sure it'll get fixed, but it's like, oh God, if only whether it's, LastPass or 1Password or something. So you could just have a way to sort of get stuff between the two. Things like, because you can make a URL of all the things you need to visit, but if you can't,
So this is what you need, like, how do you say, finger thumb authentication?
Yeah. Okay.
Then,
it's on a USB-C one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's just, what a wonderful modern world we live in. I haven't got one of those.
But it's not yet compatible with a headset, unfortunately. So it's coming,
Yeah,
but
okay.
not yet.
Yeah.
What I wanted to do since I'm here is I'll put the lab there, future text lab, this one. Also, this way I can add it to a video, to a preview. You can take also another photo there. So to me, hnd.link is the best way to share links in the headset.
Yeah, hang on.
Then it's going to load it here. I don't have to type the URL in the headset. At least it should.
I'll be back in a few seconds.
Well, now I have the link. And then I can open it.
Ta-da.
Then I have the list of.
Yeah. No, luckily, one of the things that they built in for old farts like me into 1Password is you can tell it to reveal the password and also put it in sort of 24-point text across the screen, so I can look. That's one of the best aspects of pass-through is I can look out at the thing and see it in the screen and type it in.
I'll save those. What I can also do here, I'm still using the controller, but otherwise is to control the headset from the command line, and then I can open whatever link however I want, or also control Windows in the browser. So even if it's not used in that document.
Fabian, there was a phrase you would know, things like Jupyter notebooks. Is there a sort of term for those generically as opposed to a brand name?
I don't know. I usually say notebooks. Yeah.
I have a question. So Fabian, the new recording of Oculus is actually horizontal. It's not two little squares. Maybe it would be worthwhile doing a really 60 seconds maybe of what you did, recording it properly, saying you put your headset on, 3 dots, and then you have this board in front of you, click on browser, and just walk through those steps, because Mark has been hammering into my head that what may be obvious now certainly wasn't the first time we put it on. What do you think?
Yeah,
and that could be something really nice we could have publicly available on our website for other people too.
To be honest, I wrote the little text that I sent you earlier on Twitter for the hubs part, but what I wanted to do was not just write the text, but have another window open on my desktop and record it where we can see when I enter the room in VR and then move the documents. But then it's possible to do this, and before that, have those steps as a 30 or 60-second video. Yeah, because it's all those things. I agree that it's once you've done it once, it's obvious, but once you haven't, it's scary.
There is a Quest basic tutorial, but okay, here's a first steps. Let me just put that in.
What I always advertise as work are videos, even if it's video of us looking like I don't want to say idiots, but not looking as professional as the marketing video from the tools who made the software, because it gives trust. Like, one of your colleague or friend has managed, and that if you get stuck, you can ask them. Whereas if you look at the super sleek marketing video, then it's probably true-ish, but it's still a bit scary.
And they offer a list of helpful solutions. So, you know, the first question is, how can I buy more of your stuff? And you're thinking, no, that's not the first question anybody has.
Yeah, I thought it was, have you plugged your device in?
Well, actually, that is one amazing thing these days is that, you know, actually, you know, you buy a laptop or you buy the Oculus and actually the battery is pretty much charged when you get it. So that thing of, you know, buying your new toy and having to sit and charge it for 6 hours or something before you could play with it, that's one thing we do seem to have moved beyond nicely.
Steve Jobs stopped that. He made a big deal out of that. So thanks, Mr. Jobs. They have a setup and it's so old, the kind of icons and stuff have changed. So what's the point of that?
Yeah, it's not the same icons.
Hang on.
Wait, you mean the screenshot I took, or?
No, the video that Quest have.
Okay. Because it might, I think the one I have is up to date. Not
Yes.
sure anymore.
Well, I'm not sure actually, because hang on.
Well, but yeah, maybe the one he will have will not be the latest either. I don't know.
I want to try to capture on here at the same time as we chat.
Because I noticed there's an update that's just gone through. Because in fact, I put on my things today, and it wanted to change something in the handsets, which was interesting.
Yeah, hand tracking is supposed to be significantly better, especially when you go in front, when you cross.
My Oculus is off. What's up with that? Come on. You almost certainly charged, young headset. All right, that's all very weird. But you're certainly right about the whole thing of not trying to be too slick.
Yeah, I can see you doing a good sort of homemade video, supposedly showing your home wireless charging thing with an enormous sort of Tesla arc coming across through the ether to the back of your head.
Maybe it wasn't charged.
Freud, I've put a note in the sidebar, which I think is the gist of what I was saying about the VR and the single manipulation. The hard part is, if someone was to say, well, what does that look like? I think the answer is, well, you have to imagine it at this point, because the tools aren't there. And you aren't going to want to manipulate everything. But what I see is that the environment offers, in a sense, the next stage of whatever we're calling dynamic documents or something, where rather than, you know, just pull a slider or something and make a graph or a picture or something re-render, that you could actually have more direct control.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a very visual object
or
an artwork, you might even literally go in and say, well, I want this to bend a bit more this way. I think it would, in most cases, in a work sense, it would be less direct than that. But actually understanding things. I mean, I certainly think in terms of, I mean, something that's really hard to work with at the moment are sort of, I guess, what you might call network diagrams, graphs, that you see a lot of now since social media is around, but they apply very much in a hypertextual environment. Being able to sort of effectively go in and play with, or imagine a whole slice of Wikipedia with all its links, being able to, you know, leave them attached to one another, but to move them around and to apply a sense, apply the sense that you have of the relative position and importance of these things without actually losing all their existing connections. That I find a really interesting possibility. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, I mean, network diagrams and all of that are really, really cool. And they're definitely one of the things we can benefit in VR, no question. Yeah.
Well, I think they're coming full circle. The trouble is, to a certain extent, we're stuck. There's a ghetto because a lot of the tools, basically, because, you know, go back, I don't know how many years, the big sexy thing was social media and networks and, you know, friendship affiliation networks, all that stuff. So actually, most of the graphs, that reasonably well. They're pretty rubbish at basically doing a more hypertextual graph, because they're basically built to measure a small number of measurable things like affinity, distance, and all that kind of thing. The idea that you can have a whole lot of things that are linked, that you can then actually position as you need, or play with the distance, is something that's really hard to do at the moment. I mean, there aren't tools to do it in 2D really, let alone 3D. But 3D would be far more interesting.
My own experience with so I worked a bit on a computational notebook for graph visualization and exploration in VR. But why I'll show you at some point, but why I don't push too much on it is because graph tend to not evolve properly over time. So if you have the same data set changing, then yeah, it's not going to look too good. But yeah, that's also, let me see if I just have now on the side of my wiki the 2D version of it. So the hope of the notebook and also the little save GLB button I showed you earlier was to facilitate the transition between the two, so that you make most of or a lot of your exploration in 2D and with code, because I still don't find it comfortable to code in VR. I'm working on that, but it's, yeah, I don't have a good solution now. I do have some ideas, but it's still, so doing the notebook in 2D on the computer, save it or transfer it or modifying it, and then exploring the result itself, so the graph with the exploration of, let's say, going from one node to another, and potentially making it, what's the name? Not a graph, but the thing we tend to use for when we check when our hard disk is full.
A tree map.
Yeah, tree map basically. So yeah, tree map because it would be more stable. If you have also a suggestion from Noda that of things that could make it interesting as a 2D to 3D to VR notebook, yeah, I'd be quite curious to explore, because I think that could be a good workflow. But I'm still, the one thing I haven't done is instead of the save GLB, the push to server and push to server in the hubs, so that the person in hubs would be able to play or explore it live. I think that could be also quite interesting. A kind of I like the expression. I think in chess they use it like it's like the horse with a human body, not centaur, but I think it's centaur, like the version of chess where you can play with the AI, where you have teams. So I think that could be also interesting ways to do a visualization of graph and other things in VR. Is you have one person in the headset and another who is more coding or tinkering, and then you have this back and forth live.
You're muted, Fred.
I see you have your hand, Peter. Just one quick second. I sent you the latest PDF letter to Bent. I'm just now writing the email cover letter, which is literally 2 sentences. Please have a look at this PDF and see if there's anything you strongly object to. Otherwise, I'll send it soon. Peter.
Yes, if I can share my screen, I'd just like to show you the tooling work that I've been doing. I basically now have a rudimentary literate programming system in place that I'll be able to use for the web component development work, which will let me start getting back up to the VR level of coding pretty soon. But this will let me document what I'm writing as I go, so I won't get lost. Let me show my screen now. Share. Okay. Now we're looking at the project. We have VS Code on the left half of the screen, if you can see that, and Tinderbox on the right half. Inside of VS Code, we created a Crystal application which allows us to sync content from Tinderbox automatically. This lets us use VS Code to edit source code files using all of the nice affordances that the dedicated code editor has, and Tinderbox will then automatically be able to pick up those changes. So we have out here on disk in our project file, a scrap directory where we wrote some IMBA code. That is reflected on the Tinderbox side in the scraps folder with an auto sync note. And as you can see, it's picked up the content that we edited externally into Tinderbox. Now, on the Tinderbox side, we are using a whole bunch of custom export templates in order to generate new web code, new web's literate programming system, so that interleaves directives related to creating new files and naming fragments and splicing documentation together with our source code, and other templates for actual LaTeX commands. So,
Peter,
Yeah.
so I can understand you better. Can you please remind us of the top level, what can be done here?
Okay, what can be done here is we can use the nice dedicated outliner with all these nice little note prototypes. So we don't have to think about all of the notation needed to create those final files. So we can be thinking right here, just creating a new chapter, baseline styles, and right here we have a few styles. Then we can create a new source code file, and all of that gets represented as the one web document. Now, our source code file, let me just drag your window out so that you can see here. Export automatically gets exported as the new web codes to create an output file. It's going to be located in the source directory named metamorphic.imba. And then this at angle bracket, close that angle bracket, says, now we want to expand the named fragment body styles. And that's actually represented as a little Tinderbox note object body styles. And again, you don't have to type any of those new web characters. You just type the name body styles. And from the prototype selector, let me show you a prototype inspector.
Peter, you're going quite beyond my understanding. So please remind me of the workflow that we're talking about here.
Okay, the workflow is you're working in the editor and you're creating new.
In which editor? In the editor here?
You're working in Tinderbox. Initially, you're working in Tinderbox to build the outline describing your project as a literate programming web. And this little icon here on the side of the little bar there, that represents LaTeX commands. They automatically get formatted as LaTeX commands. You don't need to do that formatting. All that you need to do on the editor side is write the name of the command, and you have a little pre-done field for options, so you can type in whatever options are going to that LaTeX command. Then Tinderbox formats it as a LaTeX directive for you.
So Peter, in a sense that, I mean, the Tinderbox, because obviously it's a proprietary app, but effectively it's standing in place of a tool set that at the moment you don't have to build to do all that
Exactly.
export process.
Exactly. It's my everything editor that's customizable. Eventually this could become a standalone dedicated JavaScript app written in the IMBA system itself. But to bootstrap, we're using Tinderbox. And so for instance here, this little icon of the bookmark, that represents a sectioning command. All the LaTeX sectioning commands have the same general form. You take the user attribute section type to tell it what level you're in the document. So that could be a book, part, chapter, section, subsection, paragraph, subparagraph. You take that and you form a LaTeX command that's the name of the section. And then you grab the title of the note and you stick this title in. And then you take the text, if there is any, of the children of the note and the text of the note, and add that. So basically, if there's content in the section, you automatically splice in whatever underneath it in the outline. But you don't need to think about any of that because Tinderbox is hiding all that. And you only need to think at the high level, okay, here's a LaTeX command. If I select LaTeX command as my prototype, all I need to do is type the command name and the options, and I need to think about any of that formatting. If you're creating a new output file, you simply type in as the file name the path to where you want the file to be created. The file will automatically get created on disk for you by the new web system when it's exported. This little link icon on the side means that we are going to take the name of a fragment and we want the expansion of that fragment. The little pencil icon means here we're going to define the fragment. And when you define the fragment, you can use an alias of one of the external autosync files. So again, your actual source code editing, you'll be doing back over on the left side in VS Code with the dedicated editor tool. So you have all the auto code completion suggestions and stuff. So you write your little fragments of your source code file there, then back in Tinderbox, you pull them in and you create an alias to the scrap that you pulled in. And that's Command L, make an alias in Tinderbox. And then you drag that where you want that code to be expanded in your final document. Now, this whole thing generates for you, without your thinking about any of the commands, the code you see in the right pane here. And this is a dedicated new web input file. The new web input file is treated as being a LaTeX input file that contains new web directives. That's the @o, which is to create an output file, @brace and @close brace, which means to insert a scrap of content here. The @angle brackets means find a named fragment and expand it. And the @d means define a fragment by the name body styles in this case. And then you have the actual fragment content, which is the raw code, again, that we pulled in from the external file done in the code editor. Now, when this thing gets dumped out to disk, because we have our little auto sync flag, we'll check the flag when we want the auto sync system to operate. It will then go and output all of that directly onto disk for us. If the file path isn't present, it will create any intermediate folders on the disk. Then it will dump the content into that file. Then we have the guard file you saw up here. And guard file is a Ruby-based command line tool that just is an automatic file system watcher and code runner. And what that does is it looks for any changes to our new web file. If the new web file has been altered, it then calls new web on it. So any changes to a file that has an extension of .w, that's a web, it will run new web. New web itself will automatically both tangle and weave. So first it will generate the external source code files and put them where those output file directives told it to put them. In this case, it will generate it on disk in the source directory over here. And here is that file coming up as a source code file in Imba. Then it calls Lua-Tech on the tech file that creates. Tech file, also generated automatically by new web, is the code to create a PDF hyperlinked documentation source file describing all of the code in our project. And it will run that, and it has to run Lua-Tech, new web, Lua-Tech, new web a couple times over, because they're intermediate files that get generated on each pass, and it takes several passes before all of the page numbers get identified and stabilized. Once that's all done, you automatically have your PDF file of the project appear. And this is a beautifully typeset example, metamorphic components, April 22nd. Table of contents, there's our baseline styles note we created, and you jump down there. So here, chapter 1, baseline styles. Here we set a few styles. You see source metamorphic Imba 5A, that's the first fragment defined on page 5. It automatically numbers them using letters and page numbers to name the fragments for you. And it says basically that this file is described by a call to expand body styles. Then right underneath it, we have the actual definition of body styles, which is the code that we, again, pulled in and had edited externally in the code editor. So this lets us use Tinderbox for creating our documentation. And again, on the Tinderbox side, all we did there was create our baseline styles, and we wrote our documentation just using the straight outliner. So the Tinderbox templates all are generating all of the ugly input code, so we don't need to think about it whatsoever, and we can purely think in terms of, okay, let's say we're going to have a new style, and let's say we want to have, page background styles. We could create a new scrap named page background styles.imba. We check its auto sync flag. It would then get created out on disk. Then we jump into the dedicated disk editor. We write our code. and it will be reflected back in Tinderbox. So it's sort of going back and forth between using each tool for what it's good at, creating the documentation on the Tinderbox side, and working with the actual source code file fragments in the dedicated code editor. And then when you're done, you have your nice generated PDF with the explanation of why all of the little bits of code do what they're doing. And you can define them in any order that makes sense when describing what's going on in your head when you're creating this. So instead of suddenly looking at a disk with 30 different source code files and you have no idea how they relate to one another, you're instead writing the story to explain to somebody else coming into the project exactly how it works, what decisions you made, and why you made them. And we have all of the power of the LaTeX typesetting system available for the documentation, which means we can tie in a BibTeX bibliography to have footnotes in it, references out to material in the real world on web pages or whatever, and those will be live hyperlinks. So if you have a citation to something on the web from inside of the documentation, you could click on that hyperlink and it would jump you right out into Safari to load that web page for you. Another feature it has that I didn't demonstrate here is the ability to define identifiers that get introduced in a different fragment. So you can, and that'll just be like a dedicated user attribute for the identifiers that are used in a fragment. You type in the names of the identifiers that you care about, then they'll automatically get indexed at the back of the document for you with cross references to where the identifier was first defined and all of the fragments that use that identifier. And the new web system handles building all of these cross references and links so that you can very painlessly navigate through your code. So there are a few bugs in this still I'm cleaning up, but it's already at the point now where I can start trying to bring in my code base that already exists that I couldn't follow because it simply got too big to be able to manage and convert it into a literate program. So I will be able to follow it and grow it and hand it off to you guys so that you'll be able to follow my thinking when I was building something and build on the tool. So that's what I've been working on for the last couple of weeks. And it'll probably take another week or two before I start having some interesting stuff on the IMBA side. So we're using this now to create all of the IMBA source code files. Then those files will eventually be able to generate web pages that can create Babylon JS based web VR experiences that you'll be able to click on, but you won't need to be thinking at that lower level of the code because a lot of it we can hide using literate programming tools.
Yeah, that's an interesting process. There are some questions here from Fabian in the text.
Oh, let me look at the chat window. Hang on. Do I have visualization of steps of the process? No, but I can certainly create one. Actually, author might be the good place to do that as an author mind map to describe how the bits connect together. So I'll do that when I can find a little bit of time. That's a good idea. Fabian, thanks a lot.
Well, in that sense, it's something else you can experiment if you're going to use author, is that you can always try repeating my experiment with making author's mind map, its concept map in a Tinderbox file. So you're creating the two JSON files, one of which is effectively the Tinderbox map, and the other one is the glossary that it links with. It's something I want to go back to and try. The point of the experiment being to see to the extent to which we can piggyback the author format to take things like maps into 3D space.
Oh, let me show you the guard file. At the moment, the actual operative code at the bottom is to watch regular expression describing what kind of file. So we have the file glob looking for web files. And in that case, it runs new web with the appropriate command line parameters, telling it to format the output to go through Lua LaTeX. Then we call LuaTeX with the file command again. Well, actually the base of the file with the tech extension so it can find the tech version generated by the original web. Then we call new web again to set the new page numbers, and that should get everything normalized. That creates our final PDF. But the guard file is just basically Ruby code that's watching the file system for changes and then running the utilities. And IMBA is imba.io. Yes, Fabian, that's the one. So that's the programming language that I'm targeting to be developing using the system. And then once I start moving my IMBA code base in, you'll be able to follow how the bits of IMBA relate, because again, it'll be a literate program explaining what language features I'm using where and what the different chunks do. And the IMBA again compiles down to web components that can be called from JavaScript or using IMBA. And we can painlessly embed the Babylon 3D library inside of that as components that can be accessed using IMBA as the top level glue. IMBA is really great for building advanced UIs. It has a lot of elegant features there that would take 3 or 4 hours to try to describe, and it's way deeper than you want to go at this point. But we'll be giving you nice little high level tools that you can just plug in and do stuff. So that's all I have to show for today.
Peter, Fabian had a question. Is that it's imba.io is the
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll just put a link into. I found something about New Web.
Yeah, New Web's really nice, and it's just basically a C program. It compiled, make install, and it was up and running in no time. And that's an unsourced file. Yes, that's the one. Very good. And it takes care of creating all the cross references, tracking down the citations and all. It could eventually all be done entirely in Tinderbox, but why bother when there's an existing command line tool that does it elegantly and takes care of it without having to go into that level of detail. So I'm trying to use each program for what it's best at. Tinderbox for hiding all of the markup code that has to be generated for the other tools to use. So you, again, in Tinderbox, you're just thinking about what prototype elements going into that outline am I dealing with? Is it a fragment definition? Is it a fragment expansion? Is it a blurb of text that I want to go into the documentation? Or is it a direct command? String those together in the outline, and Tinderbox munges all of that and turns it into the final ugly web input file that you wouldn't want to write by hand. Then the guard file picks up the change to that file, runs all the command line tools that you wouldn't want to invoke by hand because they're ugly and messy. And the net result is you just suddenly see the final PDF show up and the working program source code files. And maybe what I'll do is I can use the system to replicate the code in the system to get a literate program web describing the tooling itself. So that would be doable.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now.
Yeah, just back on the other thing. I'm now ready to send the email with that document and those links. Everybody on the call happy for me to do that? No major issues? Cool. Boom, sent. I had to ask him to verify his mailing address this week, so he does know that something is up. So it'll be interesting. Anyway, now that chapter is closed, we can look at so many other things. But I do have to say, for me, it was a hugely useful learning experience to use Spoke a little bit. But also just putting one single connecting line in a room made it look like I was in a room full of washing line or something. It was awful. So the whole difference between having a 3D sculpture of information you control versus something that's just there is completely different. Just like our experience with the mural. Walking to the mural may make you sick. Pulling it towards you doesn't, even though visually it's exactly the same thing. You know, really bizarre and really useful experiences. So, yeah, sorry.
It's those, it's beyond the visual. That's the thing that is hard to explain, or to rather to convey. Explaining it is easy, but it's not sufficient.
Yeah, and that's why I've resorted to first talking about display, because everybody will say, oh, just get another couple of displays. So that's why we had that list of, okay, if that's all you want, this is actually how displays are different in VR. So that's a thing. And Peter, I'm hoping that the brilliant work you're doing at some point, it may integrate with this, so you can actually publish straight into this environment. That would be really, really interesting.
Oh, definitely.
So then, I know we're only half past, but there's a few things going on here, as you know. It's probably okay to finish early, but my plan for this community is, we keep doing what we want to do, every one of us. And, in some cases, it's taking a bit more friction to find out what that is. But I'm very, very grateful when you guys help me with something specific like this. I really, once something is focused, we stick on that, and then we go all over the place later. It's all very good.
Oh, I saw an interesting website. Hang on, let me just grab the URL. It was a ton of data, just sort of begging for visualization. Where is it?
By the way, I'm going to show you guys the Frenchest thing I have seen in my whole life. 1 second. Where did it go? This is absolutely far and away the Frenchest thing ever. Yeah, I know, Fabian. It's a picture of you. Please have a look. I put it in chat.
Oh, where is it? Hang on. What happens when you have a dozen windows open simultaneously?
So the reason I took the screenshot is super celebration icon in completely diverse space. Yes, party.
It's my happy face.
This expression, it's such a bad word, but resting bitch face, I have that.
Yeah.
It's so it's funny when I see it, something even reflected slightly in someone else's face like that. That was quite funny. But
I'm glad we're recording this kind of stuff.
yes. Well, it's truly a compliment, but I thought that was quite cute. Also, now that I looked at the picture thing, I just sent you another screenshot. This is not a screenshot, an image.
It's a bit like trying to get a screen grab of a sort of Zoom screen where all, that there isn't a single person who doesn't have their eyes closed or they're looking at a shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a quick comment, actually, because it's funny that you took that picture. I don't have to emote with my body when I can click the button. So I did not. I clicked the button and I thought it would be more expressive this way. So it's new ways to express ourselves through click of a mouse rather than the movement of the mouse itself.
Yeah,
You've outsourced your emoting.
Okay, I found it and dropped it in the chat.
yeah, no, exactly, Fabian. As you said, it's just interesting because, like, my wife, she can be writing messages to friends with exclamation marks and big words and everything, and I can see her typing. So she's doing exactly what you did. We all do that now. It's like it's a big but anyway. The other thing I just put in is just really briefly. This is just me sitting out today thinking about author in VR, and the reason I did this brief drawing is just to show the idea of having, like, let's say, the glossary map floating in space. It just doesn't work. It's just too messy. So instead, why not just have as many dynamic displays as you want, but easy to resize them and move them around. And when you don't need them, you just flick them away. So I just wanted to reflect that thinking.
Yeah, or just turning the chair around. That's the tricky thing about the sketching or tinkering with VR. It's like here, how do you show that you actually leave everything here, but you move? And maybe also when you move, when you selected something, only this moved with you.
Yeah.
So, but I honestly, that's exactly the kind of visual that also takes place in documents when we try to get someone's attention. Because that's the kind of thing we know we're proposing something today that can be so much more tomorrow. So I think that that's again the kind of visual that I think is inspiring.
Yeah, thanks for that. Did you see the little PDF I sent with the pictures from our adventure on Monday and Tuesday? Sharing stuff with you guys. God,
I don't think so.
okay.
The other nice thing from your sketch, and going back to the observations I was making earlier, is that you can have your sort of resting state, say, of your visual map being effectively a form of display. But the joy of the environment you now have is if, for instance, you then needed to effectively load change and you wanted that display to be, as it were, all the display in front of you, or even to be able to interact more directly with it, that's a possibility, and it's actually potentially a much less disruptive phase shift as well. You know, if you're doing it in a 2D thing, you have a bit of setup and a much more noticeable context change. Potentially, you could have a display here where you could sort of reach into it and just, you know, put the things around where they need to be a bit more. And it doesn't even need to be, I mean, the fact that whether you're doing it as a 3-dimensional diagram or 2-dimensional diagram is neither here nor there, really. It's about having your 6 degrees of freedom and going to get just the relationship you want, because you're externalizing what's in here. So you see this picture, and if your hands or your keypad can't quite make it right, you can actually just reach in and have that control.
By the way, Bent just replied to the email. He said he's opened it. He's going to check it out this weekend. Peter.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of pivoting the chair, and I see 2 possibilities. Either you could have, say, a band maybe represented by sort of like a big arc in front of you, and as you moved, you could have one display that would stay centered on you, moving with you as you turn, sliding back and forth along that band. The other possibility would be to simply duplicate that display at the same location in an array, and you might have the array of screens, maybe 3 at 6 points on your curve, and on each one of them, the one display that you wanted to be visible everywhere would be in the same corresponding square. So either that, or you have the band sliding with you as you're turning your chair. I'm not sure which would work better, or you might want to use both in different circumstances. But those are 2 ways I can think of trying to keep something that would be visible while you're also changing your focus while rotating around at your desk.
Yes, absolutely. We have to experiment with things like that. And also talking to a friend yesterday, and she suggested being just wave things away. Like, you know, you're focused and you pull something out, put it, blah, blah, blah. But there's a gesture, there's just that. And then all other screens other than main screen goes away until you pull it back. You know, the whole, you know, on a Mac trackpad, you can do this, that, and the other, which is great. But of course, in a VR space with gestures, we should be able to, after a while, design things like, I want everything back, everything gone, whatever it might be. So opportunities are great.
I think also that's a little bit that at the very beginning of technology, we're just being extremely literal, like we piggyback on what we use on the previous medium. So right now we're just using screens in VR, for example. But with a chair and what Peter highlighted, it's basically augmented reality in VR, because if one screen follows you, it's as if you had AR glasses, because in the end, the content tracks your field of view, your point of view, rather. So in the end, it's pretty trivial, and it's actually really easy to code. Like, you have the point of view of the headset, and then you make relative to it a screen, and the other one is fixed. And the same for the watch that we had a brief discussion, I think 2 weeks ago, where saying, oh, we could grab from someone else's watch like a tiny program, or we can exchange them. And I think it's basically the mix of displays or dynamic content, let's say, that is fixed in space, but also relative to the body, and then a bit more personal, like my AR display might not be shared with you, but the fixed one might be, we might also share the moving ones. But I'm just trying to say that a lot of that is technically not hard to do. We're just, I guess, mostly maybe due to want to onboard newcomers or very, very conservative in the end about the interfaces we use in the new medium.
Yes, because I know I found this image, you know, such fun for sort of departmental meetings, where if you could throw your documents at one another, because that's really what you want to be doing. Have something more kinetic debate.
Talking
No
of
one's
kinetics,
heard.
have you had a chance to look at open the PDF that I sent the link to, the Dropbox one?
I've downloaded it, sorry.
Okay.
The report.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I said it lacks KPIs. I can't read a report without an executive summary. KPIs,
Oh, is that what you were saying?
That was the joke.
Sorry. Okay.
I'll make jokes. I'm good. We got that on tape too.
Yes. Yeah, because just flying through it, there's a few things. Obviously, this was a kind of a holiday for Edgar and to get away from things. But even on page 2, a pet bird, what would that mean in VR? Right, we're going to have some kind of creatures doing work for us, right? So, you know, then the next the page, the whole environment, it doesn't have to be big. It could be a little tent. It was very nice and intimate. Of course, the whole tree thing. But the really interesting thing that I think reflects back on what we talked about many times is multiple rooms, of course. And there are 2 ways to go to different rooms. One is to navigate to another room by walking a corridor, which is useful for understanding the relationships and also memory palace. But then at the same time, you should be able to just snap and your entire environment just changes instantly, right? Like, and also all the beautiful details. But if you go to page 11, for instance, tiny chair, tiny desk, but beautiful environment. And then 12, they had a room just for chess. You know, that's the kind of thing we're talking about, right? So VR basically is castles in the sky. And then 13, to just work, to even draw, if we could have a physical worktop, because AR, VR, we all agree it's going to merge anyway, right? So imagine if you had a table like that, like a drafting table in your room, but if it's mapped onto your VR headset, it'll know where it is, so you can do that. Same thing, the next one. And then 15, I just love the idea of having an entirely virtual environment where your work area is almost nothing. You know, maybe all you can do is write a little letter, like a tweet, but you have a huge view and relaxing and all of that stuff. And then also on 16, why does it have to be so Disney cartoonish every time? Why can't we have something like 1950s Mad Men style for our meeting rooms, right? And what happens to ambient things on 17? Like,
so you can sit in VR behind your big empty desk, shouting at people over the telephone.
yes, exactly. Yeah, and even have a telephone, but you know, like on 17, I could so easily imagine now that we're working on a project together, I go into one room and there's a portrait of you. And that portrait is, you know, what you want it to be, but it'll change depending on whatever status you want to make public, obviously, right? So, and then I thought it was kind of cute on 18, page 18. She had a film projector in her bedroom. You know, that's obviously the kind of stuff we can do now, but that was cool. And of course, 19, Edgar the Archer. What tools are we going to have in VR? Some are going to be very serious. Some could be just playful, you know. And then if you look at the ones at Diggerland, where Edgar was actually by himself operating a full-size digger. I have a 2-minute video online, but where you can see everything moving, and then I pan down, you see it's only Edgar's tiny little hands. Yeah, right? But the controls are, you know, an interface expert would hate them because, for instance, to move the front digger bucket, you know, you do this, that's fine. But to make it open and close, what do? It goes sideways. So it doesn't map logically. But when a 4.5-year-old, almost 5-year-old, after a few minutes just gets it, clearly it's working, right? And then 24, that reflects on, we talked about tutorials and guides and people. It would be really, really nice if in VR, someone can come in and literally help you do a thing. Like this guy helping Edgar drive this massive vehicle, right? And of course, the last shot is just Edgar looking amazing. Peter, that link to the GDELT project is absolutely amazing. We have to figure out a way to use some of that. It's literally screaming out, isn't it?
Yep. You just jumped at me and I thought, I gotta show Fro this first chance I get. Oh, and I put a link to a nice Art Deco documentary.
Oops, it's making sounds.
It's going to be going away in a day. I think you're going to paywall it, but it's free at the moment. Some very nice mural work that you might enjoy.
Yeah, that's really cool.
20s, so that just brought to mind.
Really,
So I
really
thought I'd
cool.
share it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. And yeah, I hope as we reconvene next week, we will keep going in all kinds of directions. I apologize for having been a bit pushy recently, last month or so, with first Egyptian must do Egyptian, and then Linnean must do Linnean, and then Vint must persuade Vint. But I think the last one has been useful. It has helped us do some thinking, and now it should be all over the place. Yes, Fabian.
A quick word on that. I don't know, there is the expression like herding cats.
Yes.
So there is that, well, in general, for people that don't have, let's say, the compliance, like we did not have a contract or something like this in general. But I also wanted to share the specificity of prototypists, like Adam, Brandon, and I. But I see Peter too in the end, because Peter, you're building something that is new, that maybe you only will use, maybe other will use, but it still need to make it from basically your ideas. But I think it's a special kind of development mindset that it's very different from somebody who will get like specifications. Let's say you have to do A, B, C, D in this amount of time with this amount of people, and boom, do it. I'm not saying one is easier than the other, but it's a very different mindset, which makes it quite challenging, because normally, again, with a, but it's necessary also. Like it's necessary in the sense that VR is not what the web was 10 years ago. So it means we need to explore, use also some of the limitation of Spoke, some of the stuff that is just new, that doesn't make sense, that is broken. So it means at some point you need to like be trying to pick the low-hanging fruit or try things or break things and whatnot. So just to highlight the point that it's especially challenging with people that are used to look for whatever can work now or whatever is exciting or whatever is shiny. So I'm definitely glad that we're trying something, even though, yeah, despite those challenges, having a focus, having example, having also a deadline, like, okay, we need to send something today is productive, because also otherwise, to be honest, we stay in our little bubble, which is very comfortable, but then we forget to ask sometimes, okay, but what's the point in the first place? Why do we care about metadata? What do we care about VR? What do we care about this kind of process or APIs or whatnot? So I think that's super challenging, but still very valuable.
Yes, on all points. And when you talk about herding cats, only sometimes do we really need to do that. And as you say, it can be very valuable and difficult to have a deadline and to do something. But I think in general, we don't need to worry about that, because it is the free, wide-ranging discussions, rabbit holes that are really valuable and unique. Not a lot of organizations can afford neither the time nor the brain space for that. So, you know, striking a balance of going in and out of different modes is probably very useful. And also, you know, looking, as I've had to, at life itself recently, and you know, you look at Doug's visions. Number one, only demos ever gave him any kind of credibility, not writing about it. Number two, Doug's people left him after the demo because they wanted to go to park to do something fun. You know, it's absolutely obscene in one level, but it makes sense on another level. So we here, we have to make sure that we also strike the balance between what we differently consider the important work and the fun work. And I think we don't always agree on what's important and fun. I mean, Adam felt that this whole exercise with persuading Bint that VR is useful was a complete waste of time. He wanted us to look at more of the why to work rather than what to do in VR. And I'm a little disappointed he didn't just bring that up as, can we put it on the agenda for chats? But I'm sure he will. But, you know, the whole point that we see things differently is the reason we're together. You know, we're all straight white men, so to speak, but, you know, brain-wise, we're all very different. And we will hope to increase the diversity, but it has to be natural. There's no point forcing someone into a group they don't feel they want to be in, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, in a sense, you encapsulated the last thing, because in fact, a common trope is to assume that our sort of our range of viewpoint stems from the color of our face or the way we dress. So I mean, in a sense, actually, the most useful divergence in this is actually perspective. And I know from past things I've worked in, it's difficult to do, because eventually someone will come along and sit there, keep saying, "Are we there yet?" And that's not the exploration, because it does go in lumps. And sometimes you've got to play with an awful lot of things before the sense. You do have to kiss a lot of frogs, I think, in this, to do things that don't quite work, to give you the confidence that the thing that you may then try actually isn't going to fall into the same pitfalls that the previous things. So it's often not that things don't work; it's that they only work so far. And that's why I see the fun in the testing, because yes. A penny for every time someone wanted to pass the desk. Said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "Go away. That's not a helpful question."
And on that bombshell, if it's okay, we will adjourn early today.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Hope to see you on Monday, and on Wednesday I have my Viva, so it'll be the last session we have before I find out whether I'm this or that. All right, bye guys. Thanks very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.